الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lessons on Usul Fiqh. Last week we completed the discussion of the Adillah which the ulama differed over. So that completes our discussion about the various evidences, that which is muttafaq and that which is mukhtalaf fiha, that which is agreed upon, that which is differed over. And that leads us to our third discussion then, which is most of the discussion of Usul Fiqh, and most of the difference of opinion really go back to, and that has to do with the dalalat, the indications and the significations of words or the religious texts. And we're going to explain what this means. Before going there, we mentioned an example last week that requires explanation. Last week we gave an example of hudud, corporal punishments. And we said that they don't change. And therefore masalih mursala doesn't apply to these. But it can apply to things where it's based either on masalih, like something where the sharia didn't give us taqdirat, numbers and estimations, or like the detail limits, or things that go back to urf, customs. So the question we raised last week was Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, at his time, it comes in the hadith in Muslim, that Umar, he changed the divorce when you pronounce 3 divorces at one time. It used to be time of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also the beginning, and also the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and the beginning of the Khilafah of Umar. If a man pronounces his wife divorced 3 times, it counts as 1. But later in Umr's time, he changed it from, if you said 3, it counts as 3. So how does this make sense? Is this from the masalih, or is this something different? We said the masalih mursala, the public interest, don't apply to the hudud, that which the sharia has given us as fixed laws. Like you can't say, for the people's benefit today, we're going to pray 3 salah a day. 5 is too much, let's decrease. You can't, the sharia said 5. If the sharia says the punishment for something, you can't change it. If the sharia says, for example, talaq is marratan, 2 times, and after the 3rd one you might pronounce you're irrevocably divorced, what did Umar do there? So anyone looked into this masala, or it says homework, or did I? No one went into it? Why Umar changed it? So look at the hadith, Ibn Abbas fil Muslim, hadith 1472. It says, كان الطلاق على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأبي بكر والسنتين من خلافة عمر طلاق الثلاثة واحدة. The talaq, divorce, the time of Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم, Abu Bakr, and the 2 years, initial years of Umar's Khilafah, if a man pronounces his wife divorced 3 times, it counts as 1. فقال عمر بن الخطاب إن الناس قد استعجلوا في أمر كانت لهم فيه أناه. The people now have hastened to an affair which we used to take seriously and delay in decisions. فَلَوْ أَمْضَيْنَاهُ عَلَيْهِمْ فَأَمْضَاهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. But if they don't slow down or stop what they're doing, I'm going to execute the ruling on them. Means if they keep doing 3, I'm going to count it as 3. So here the ulama gives us an example. Umar radiyallahu ta'ala, he didn't change the rule. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says talaq is 3, right? You can't change the sharia. So what did he do? Imam Nawawi in Sharh Muslim, he explains. At the time of Umar radiyallahu ta'ala, first of all, there's more than one interpretation of what Umar was intending to do. But the gist of the matter, it has to do with culture. The culture that people changed, the urf. So what happened was, in the past, the Sahaba, if they ever pronounced 3 divorces at one time, which they didn't, because we know to pronounce your wife divorced more than one time is considered talaq al-bid'i. That's an innovated talaq. Talaq is supposed to be 1 and then iddah, another, then iddah, another, then iddah, not 3 times in 1. So what was happening at the time of Umar, people were saying 3 divorces, and they intended each one. Whereas time of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr, in the early time of Khilafah Umar, if a man ever divorced his wife 3 times, the first one he meant it, and the other 2 was considered emphasis, a ta'keed. That's it. It's ta'keed, just trying to emphasize the first one. But in the waqt of Umar, after the first 2 years of Khilafah, the 2 became al-isti'naf. So instead of emphasizing the first one, they meant each one, which is dangerous, right? Because if someone's intending 3 divorces, even though it's bid'i, does it count? What's the most correct opinion? Man did a divorce his wife clearly with intention but in the wrong way, it still counts? Counts. Right? Even if it's intimacy, it still counts. It's wrong, but it still counts. So Umar, he realized people now changed their urf. The way they're pronouncing the divorce changed. So you know what he says? Umar never changed the law. However, عن اختلاف عادة الناس, when the people's the customs changed, then Umar changed the ruling. لا عن تغيير حكم بمسألة واحدة. He didn't change the ruling. He changed based on what people were intending. Showing the fiqh of Umar, right? Fiqh of Umar. Umar is the imam. He's not going to be playing around. Unfortunately, in today's time, many of the people who are liberals or lenient say, look, Umar was changed the Sharia. What Sharia was he changing? Right? You know, this is what people are going to come to. You know, you can make changes. Umar did. And we're going to tell them, what are you talking about? Right? Umar changed it because people changed their way of pronouncing the divorce. Because divorce counts on what you intended. What do you intend by it? So this shows the benefit that this is not against the principle we learned last week. In the Sharia, if the Sharia tells you something, you can't change it. That's the rule. But when the Sharia leaves something open, then the fuqaha say that the government or the Qaadir can make it ijtihad. An example, the Sharia didn't tell us how much nafaqa, sustenance a man should give his wife. It goes back to urf. Ma'ashiruhunna bima'ruf. Everyone gives according to what they're able to or what's considered customarily acceptable. But if a man lives in a place or he's in a case where he's greedy or stingy, right, and he's pretending he has no money, even though he has, or the urf is not very strong, the Qadi could make the ruling, okay, this much you have to pay per month. Why? Why is he coming with it? Because Sharia left nafaqa open. So that can be done, right? Especially in cases where the husband is depriving his wife, because Rasul told the wife of Abu Sufyan to take what is needed by ma'ruf. But someone might say, my urf, or my, where I live, I don't know where he lives, but he wants to give less. So these cases, the Sharia does allow that. But Umar, why I mentioned the example? It's not against what we're studying. Umar is a faqih. He knows these things. The fuqaha. And this is very important because some people today try to co-opt Umar's story. But anyway, it's just a benefit because we looked at it last week. طيب, let's move, inshallah ta'ala, to today's discussion, which is the most important discussions. And really, most of the discussions of fiqh, the difference of opinion, the issues that we know about, come from this angle. And that has to do with the chapter, Dalalatul Alfadh. It's called Dalalatul Alfadh. Dalala or dalalat, it means the indications, and alfadh means wordings. So dalalatul alfadh is what are the indications that the Sharia and its legislative wordings or evidences indicate. What do the evidences indicate? So for example, last week we studied the Quran. Quran is evidence. Hadith is evidence. Ijma' is evidence. Qiyas is evidence. Qawl al-Sahabi is evidence. Right? Keep going. طيب, you have now one of those proper evidences. The next question is, what do the evidence mean? This is where most of the debates is. So this is called, right, dalalatul alfadh. Dalala, or might means indication or significance or implication. So you could say meanings. So dalalatul alfadh, what is the meaning of the words? So some they mention that, some just say ad-dalalat, right, the indications and the meanings. طيب, dalalatul alfadh, the wordings, it's not only the wordings, because we're going to say that also from the fiqh evidences or actions. So this week we're going to focus on actions, because most of the conversation is about, not actions, sorry, wordings. We're focusing on wordings. So to help us picture this in our head, imagine somebody gives you an evidence, Quran, Hadith, anything like this, authentic evidence. The first question we're going to be asking then, after we figure out it's authentic, ayah is authentic, Quran, of course, Hadith authentic, good, Qawl al-Sahabi, you have the primary rules we mentioned last week, someone gives you, for example, ijma', what kind. Once you have verified the evidence's validity, the next step is, what is it telling us? How do the ulama go from an ayah to the meaning or the ruling? So an example we give, Allah says in the Quran, أقيموا الصلاة, establish the prayer. The dalil min al-Quran. Okay, so we got the Quran, no problem. What's the meaning? The ma'ana, salah is wajib. How did we go from the ayah from the wajib? How do we go from this ayah to wajib? أقيموا الصلاة, Allah is saying, and pray the prayer. How do we know it's not mustahab? So this is what's called dalala. What's the meaning of the ayah? How do you know it's wajib or mustahab or mubah or makruh or haram? The next question we'll be asking is, what is haram or what is halal and mustahab? To what degree? What are the exceptions? All the questions you can think about that evidence are what we're studying here. And this is where fiqh usually, the ulama differ. The fuqaha and the four schools of fiqh, this is where they differ. The real discussions are here. We all agree this ayah. We all agree the hadith sahih. Or sometimes we differ on the hadith, but most cases, let's say hadith sahih. We agree on it. We're different on the meaning. So to really know fiqh is this. If you wanted to really be honest, where is the real conversation? Fiqh is here. Faqih, really, this is what he's arguing. This is that. I think this, I understood this way, you understood that way. So the ulama, when they have the same ayah, the same hadith, the same evidence, but they have different opinions, this is ikhtilaf al-afham. Difference opinion of the ulama and the uqud, the fahm, which Allah allowed the sharia and the ulama to have. Allah allowed the ulama to differ on their understanding of certain things, where other things He didn't allow us to differ over. But when you find the fiqh is full of different opinion, you're always asking why. Same ayah, right? Same hadith, right? Different interpretation. And the interpretations have rules, and they have principles, and you have to study them properly. The more you know, the better you can apply them. And also, without them, you couldn't do fiqh. Hence, the ulama will say, to be a mujtahid and a faqih, you need this. Ulama mentioned from the shurut ijtihad is not hifz. I know, right? Someone would be shocked. No, it's not. Because someone could have books written down for him. But it's that fahm. Without this wasita, this tool, to go from the hadith to understanding, you can't be a mujtahid, wala faqih, wala alim, proper one. Because what are you going to do? You're going to say Allah said and you apply it the wrong way? What was the problem with the Khawarij? Right, they understood the Quran? No, they just memorized it. But in La tajawaz taraqiyahum, they didn't pass their throats, right? They know the ayah, they have no idea. Ayah of kuffar, they put on a Muslim. Right? That's how it is. Today, what's the difference between a faqih and a jahil? Everyone knows Quran, right? Someone can quote you ayah just amma. His fahm is so off, right? And yours is correct. So the difference we're going to see is here. To really understand the deen is here. To better understand this then, there is different ways in approaching a text. The first one we're going to look at, and so if you make a chart, you can see that every text, you can break it down into categories, 4 categories. Category 1. Whenever you find a religious evidence, which is a text, a wording, the first question we're going to ask, is it a command or a prohibition? That's the first question. Al-amr wa nahi. Is it a command or prohibition? So we're going to use questions to help us. So this will be investigation. So when you get a text, you can ask these questions. And again, maybe later we can make a checklist. If you answer these questions, you'll get somewhere. If you don't answer the questions, you can't get the answers, right? So the question number 1, I have an ayah, I have a hadith, I have something. Usually it's ayah and hadith because it's the source core text, everything else comes after it. Whatever statement I have, because other evidence is like ijma', I can't really fall into this. Ijma', if it comes, it's evidence. But where does it come from? Quran and Sunnah. So here we're talking about ayah or hadith usually. So I got an ayah, I got a hadith. First question I'm going to ask, is it an amr or is it nahi? Is it a prohibition or a command? Alright? Because the sharia is amr wa nahi. Why amr nahi? What is fiqh again? What is fiqh study again? Halal haram, but what's the main focus again? The actions. The a'mal of the mukallifin, right? The actions of the religiously responsible people. So the a'mal that we're doing can only be either do or don't do. Or you're allowed to do. Or dislike to do. Or recommended to do. So because it has to do with what you have to do, it can only be a amr or nahi. How about khabar? Khabar is like a report. Like for example, it's snowing today. That's called khabar. It's not amr or nahi. But not so fast. It can. Sometimes you're going to have amr nahi fi surah al-khabar. We're going to talk about later. This is the part where it gets super interesting. But we're going there. What does khabar mean? I tell you today it's snowing outside. That's called a report. When someone gives you a khabar, you have 2 questions to ask. Truthful or not? So sidq, is this truthful or is it a lie? So if it's snowing today, it's truthful. Okay? That's a khabar sahih or it's trustworthy. If it's a lie, it's a lie. Akhbar, what do they deal with? They deal with truth or falsehood. So they don't deal with ahkam. Because ahkam is do, don't do. So where do you find akhbar usually? Aqidah. MashaAllah. You with this? Everyone's with this so far. Aqidah is akhbar. You believe this? We don't believe that. Authentic? Not because ilm al-ghayb, we can't see. So Allah said it, sadaq Allah. Nabi said it, sadaq Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sahaba said it, ijma'. Someone made it up, any dalil. Right? Someone tell you something, no. Khabar is either is truthful or not. So when aqidah is sahih, it's truthful. Right? So khabar. And that teaches us then the deen is only two things really. A khabar wal amr. Right? Or they say insha. Insha means do or don't do. So the whole deen, you can divide it into two categories. Sharia wal aqidah. You've heard said this before, right? You remember Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned it. The whole Sharia is two things. Sharia, the whole deen is Sharia and Aqidah. Sharia deals with do's and don'ts, is mostly insha. Do, don't do. Aqidah is akhbar. وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدَلًا. What does this tell us? The whole deen. Allah completely speaks صِدْقًا في أخباره عَدْلًا في أحكامه. خلاص. Allahu Akbar. That's the whole deen, guys. One ayah. The whole deen is there. Shaykh Salah, Shaykh, the way you explained, that's the whole deen right there. Sidqan means everything Allah says in Aqeedah or just about Akhirah. Sidqan. Aqeedah, that's why it's taslim. When it comes to ahkam, adlan. But we have to figure if it's hukm Allah. That's where we're differing. Aqeedah is simple. Allah said it. Right? وَسَلِّمُ تَسْلِيمًا. When it comes to fiqh, what did Allah say? What does it mean? That's why I have ikhtilaf. Allah, this shows you again, our deen, brothers and sisters, nothing like it, nothing like it. Jews and Christians, they have nothing like this. Right? Again, you can summarize the whole deen one ayah, and you can make a tafsir of it in a whole library. Them, they can't summarize anything or complete it, because their deen is mixed with batil. If you understand this now, ahkam are to do with do's and don'ts, amr wa nahi. When it comes to aqidah, then akhbar, truthful, not truthful. Since when Allah says it, it's truthful. Rasulullah said it, truthful. Sahaba said it, truthful. Science said it, I gotta double check. You see? That's why someone comes to science and said, yeah, Shaykh, science, is it like Allah says, بَمَا اسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ قِيلًا وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا. Science, you gotta double check. If it's truthful with you, if it's not, out. But the Quran and Sunnah, you don't do it. Why? Because Allah said it. Allah never makes a mistake. You see, that shows you again, if someone today comes with science, we're going to put it in its place. Put science in its place. That's a different conversation. Let's talk about ahkam now. Amr wa nahi. That's the first question you have to ask. Second question. What is this command or prohibition, whatever one you found, what is it indicating? So the second question, what is it indicating? So you have then, you could say 4, or you could say 6 choices, really. So 6 really discussions. Now I found a command or found a prohibition. I'm going to ask, what is the prohibition or command telling me? So this is in pairs. You could say 3 pairs. Pair number 1. Is the command or prohibition general or specific? That's the first pair. General, specific. So Allah says, Aqimus salah, right? Pray the salah. I'm going to ask the next question. This is a command. Is it am or khas? General, specific. That's the first pair. Second pair. Is it mutlaq or muqayyid? Is it unrestricted or restricted? Remember, both pairs don't have to always be there. You're gonna follow the evidence to figure out. But the second pair is it restricted or unrestricted? Mutlaq or muqayyid? We're going to talk each one later about it. Just follow the categories. So the first pair you're asking, general or specific. Al-am, general. Khas, specific. Second question, is it restricted or unrestricted? And mutlaq means unrestricted. Muqayyad means restricted. That's the second question, the second pairing. And the third pair, al-mantuq wal-mafhum. Is the text explicit or implicit? It's explicit in its ruling. The ruling, is it explicit or is it implicit? So al-mantuq means explicit, and mafhum means implicit. It's there, but you have to read into it. Kind of like in real life, right? Like any legal text, either it's implied or it's explicit. So we have 3 pairs. I got a command. Okay, let's say I got a command, aqimus salah, right? I'm going to find out this is a command. So first question I asked, command or prohibition, I found out it's a command. Next, I have 3 pairs of questions. And what are these about? What is the meaning of this? So I'm going to ask the question, is it general or specific? Next questions, restricted or unrestricted. Next one, explicit or implicit. Al-mantuq means what's expressed explicitly. Wal-mafhum, what we understood implicitly. Just like in real life, you may say something and I know what you mean, and sometimes I say something clearly and we all heard what I meant. Just like that. Just like in dunya, in regular life, we have it in the deen. طيب, that was the second set of questions. There were 6 things. The next questions we're going to be asking, what kind of text do we have? We know it's a command, but we're going to ask in terms of how you know if it's general, specific, all these things. How do you know? So the question is really about, you have a text, but what kind of wordings are you using? So maybe the question is, we should phrase it as, what kind of wordings are you working with? And this would be different depending on what wordings you use. This one has 3 questions. So what kind of wordings are we dealing with? Are we dealing with a nas? Nas means textual, clear cut, no 2 cents about it. So the best way to translate it, definitive text. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. I'll say Allah is one. We call this in Usul Fiqh nas. There's no 2 cents about it. Allah is one, not 2. Someone can't come and say, "Akhi, my faham is 2." No. It's nas. There's no second opinion. So this is called nas. Nas means highest grade. It's definitive. Nobody, unless of course he's a kafir or deviant or something, next level deviant, it's going to come and say, "No, akhi, Allah once said 1, but he means 2." No. We tell him, okay, walk. Right? We don't have to engage with that guy. Just walk away. Right? Because he's talking about nas. Second one, zahir. This is the one we all hear. Zahir means apparent. So the way we can translate it, it's explicit, but it's not definitive. Zahir means apparent. What does even apparent mean? Sometimes we use words, we don't know what it means. Zahir just means there's 2 or more meanings. One is more clear than the other. Now you get it? So to make it easy, if I say it's nas, 1 meaning and 1 meaning only. If it has 2 meanings or more, it's called zahir. And if it has more 3 meanings or no one knows what it means, it's called mujmal. Mujmal means it can go any way. It can go this way, that way. No, none of the 2 meanings clear. Mujmal is pretty much like saying obscure. Wallahu a'lam. So why is it important? What words are you dealing with? Nas, al-zahir, wal-mujmal. Simple way to understand it. Nas, 1 meaning and only 1 meaning. Al-zahir, 2 meanings or more. One is stronger than others. One comes to your head quicker than others. Third one, mujmal. It can go both ways or any way. An example, Allah said in the Quran that a woman, when she gets divorced, she stays salat al-quru. Quru, what does quru mean? One group of Mufassirin said it means menstruation. The other group said it means purity. So the 2 others, they're opposite each other. Like they're on 2 sides. They don't know. One word can mean everything. Both of them. It's obscure. Wallahu a'lam. None of them is stronger than the other. That's called mujmal. And in the Sharia, there's nothing that's mujmal except the Sharia clarified it. Just be careful. Some people say, "Oh, the deen's all obscure." No. You must be some esoteric, guy, some batani. The whole deen is up for grabs. Mujmal, huh? Some people come and say everything is cryptic. No. Tell them, if something is mujmal, the Sharia will do what? Clarify it. Hence, we have something called mubayyin, we'll see later. So we'll leave that later. So now we have 3 levels of the wordings. Why do you think it's important to know the levels of wordings? Okay, imagine today we are having a conversation about Allah's Tawheed. As oneness, and I say, Allah said, Allah Ta'ala, Qul Allahu Ahad. That's proof Allah is one. The Christian is not going to say, well, it could mean something else. If he tells you, what's your proof Allah is one? Qul Allahu Ahad. I brought you an ayah, and it's nas. Say, Allah is one. That's it. Now, if the text is zahir, means there's 2 meanings or more, one is stronger than the other, but one is more apparent, but there's more than 1 meaning. This is called a zahir, right? The person can argue with me. I say, but brother, I think it might mean that. Most of the khilafat, where are they? Fi dhawahir. Zahir, yeah. Now you get it? Zahir nas, not dalil by itself. Why? Because you have to strengthen or be careful that the zahir nas is not understood wrongly. If the zahir nas is dalil, if it's within all of its capacity, it means it's dalil and make sure you understood it in the correct way. But if you have a zahir nas, you have to prove that the meaning of the text, the zahir is apparent. But if someone says, I can't prove it, al-asl fi shay al-zahir. So if I don't know how to prove that the opinion, what's more apparent, is more stronger, what do you do in the Sharia? What's the rule? The qa'idah we're going to say, somebody may say, brother, it has 2 meanings. But what's the rule in Sharia? We take the Quran and Sunnah ala al-zahir. Doesn't matter. If I cannot prove to you anything, I'm ignorant, I don't know, I just read the text out of zahir, I'm right, you're wrong. To do what's called ta'wil is when you move from the apparent meaning to the second meaning. Everybody's with me now? Now you're going to start understanding what al-bid'ah are doing in the Sifat al-Rahman. Asma wa Sifat, now you know what they're doing. They don't take a nas. They're not going to say Qul Wahid means something else. You're never going to hear that. They're going to say Bal yadahu mabsutatan. Yad, it has two meanings. Zahir, it could mean Sifa, an attribute which is Dhatiyya. And second meaning could mean Quwwa. So let's jump to the Quwwa. Yeah, you see, they're smart. They come with the Zawahir. They're going to come to you and say, Akhi, it's not Zahir. This is Ma'awwal. Bitik Ta'wil. You see what's going on here? You're right, he's wrong, but you don't know how to prove it yet. Because you're wondering, where is he even going there? He's not foolish. He already made sure he gets a text that has two meanings. If he talks about Nas, he's going to tell Nas. He can't argue. So that's when Aqeedah is a special discussion. Fil Fiqh, the ulama, they know that the text can mean different things depending on the context. So Zahir is proof, but we have to make sure what? It's what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam really meant, what Allah really meant. So Zahir is evidence. But just remember, ulama, when they differed because it's possible the meaning could mean something else. Or it could mean this, but in different levels. Like we agree the text is clear, but we don't know if it's general or specific. So most of the fuqaha, they don't differ on with Zahir or Nas. They're not going to, because they know it's Zahir. Where they're going to differ? Is it general or restricted? Is it explicit or implicit? Is it restricted, unrestricted? Yes, there we go. Is it wajib or mustahab? So let's give an example. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, Allah says, and pray the salah. This is a Quran evidence. It's a command. Okay, so we answer the first question. Is it am or khas? It's am, it's general. أَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, Allah says. So we're going to see later, Allah is giving us sifa, fi'l amr, command, as-salah, all the salawat is general. And now the next question we're going to ask, is it explicit or implicit? It's explicit. So now the question we're going to have is, okay, all salahs you have to pray. But somebody may come to you and say, well, it could mean some salah you don't have to pray. We're going to tell them, no, brother. Allah said pray salah. That means all salah. And we're going to argue that this command is all salahs, unrestrictedly and generally. If I tell you some salah are exempted, I have to bring the proof. Because the evidences are clear. But the ulama, when they differ though, how did they know Allah says establish the prayer means it's wajib? Well, we're going to see later that the commandments usually mean wajib and prohibitions usually mean haram. So we're going to learn this. But you see how the ulama, when they analyze the text, they're asking key questions to figure out what it's saying. To make sure they're going to give Allah's proper ruling. So for example, if someone says, Aqimu salah, it says I pray the salah, but it doesn't tell you how to pray. So he's right, it just tells us to pray, it doesn't tell how to pray. So from this ayah, all I know is I have to pray. How to pray? Allah never told me. Allah just said salah. And salah has two meanings, right? Salah, salah, and dua. So we know it means salah, salah, but the question is someone say, well, how do you know it means salah? Rasulullah will show us. So we're going to go to his sunnah. That will come later. The last question we have to ask, and this is the fourth and last question, is the text abrogated or unabrogated? And that's a conversation for later. Alright, so it means once I found out a text, I have to ask the question, is it nasikh or mansukh? Abrogated or unabrogated? Question you must ask. Why? Because if a text is abrogated, you can't take its ruling. But sometimes something could be abrogated in wording, not the ruling, and sometimes the ruling, not the wording, like this, right? So we're going to find out later. Abrogation is very important because if you don't know what's abrogated or not, you can make mistakes by teaching people wrong things. What's an example of abrogation? Anyone knows? Punishment of zina used to be in the Quran, read, but the ruling is still there. Good. Now approaching salah when intoxicated. So somebody who's a drug addict might come and say, Akhi, I didn't pray salah. La taqrabu salata wa antum sukara. So I can't pray. We tell him, you're right, you can't pray in that state. But you're going to be punished later and pray again after, right? He's not off the hook, right? But he might be reading the salah, say, Allah just said, don't come next to the salah. So, yeah, that was the first stage. Read the ayah in Surah Ma'idah. Fajtanibuhu, stay away from it. So some people, even that one, the awam, they don't know what fajtanibuhu means. They say, Allah just said avoid it. Fajtanibuhu doesn't mean avoid it. It means absolutely haram. That's the strongest wording. Stay away. But they're wording, they're lay people. We didn't expect them to know that. So they say, where is the proof? It's haram. So then you have to tell them, listen, do you know anything? Deen? But most people are smart, they say no. But that's a good evidence. The brother mentioned some people that might not know the ayah is abrogated, think you could still drink and smoke. You have to explain. So we'll talk about abrogation later. It's more different. It has a application, but the rule of thumb, most of the evidences are not abrogated. That's the rule. طيب, let's just begin with the first one for today, which is command and prohibition. So we'll do each question separately. There's no point of going fast. It's better to understand. And if you understand this, it will take your understanding of the deen to levels. You go from one level to the next level. Because now you have a deep understanding of the deen. You're in the space of the ulama now, and the conversation of the ikhtilaf. First discussion we said is something's amr wa nahi, right? Command or prohibition. Hence the ulama said, what's an amr? What's a command? It's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do something or to avoid something. So a command could be do it, and a nahi is to avoid it. But both of them are requiring you to do something. Either to do something or to avoid. So some scholars say whenever you hear the word amr, it just means طلب الفعل بالقول على جهة استعلاء. That's the technical definition. But simple definition, Allah wants you to do something. That's a command. When nahi, prohibition, Allah wants you to avoid something. And both of them are coming from Allah. Or His Messenger ﷺ, who gave him that revelation. Allah gave him revelation. The first conversation then is, how do we know something is a command? Because if you want to know the Shariah's amr wa nahi, you need to know what are the siyagh, or the wordings, siyaghul amr. So the siyagh means the wordings. We talked about this before, and we'll try to summarize it in the simplest way. You can know something is a command in two ways, you could say. Number one, through its wordings, and number two, through its meanings. So we know something is a command to two ways, its wordings and its meanings. So the wordings would give us specific wordings. If you find them, equals command. Or meanings. If you find them, it means command. Last time we talked about this, I gave you some of the wordings. Anyone remembers any of them? Fi'l amr. What's fi'l amr mean? A command form in Arabic, right? So a verb in command form means to do. That's the most common version. For example, sallu, pray, kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Here in this hadith Bukhari, sallu fi'l amr. It's a command. Because if you study Arabic, you have the past tense form, madi, wal mudari', the present, and you have the mustaqbal or the future, and you have fi'l amr, the command. This is command form. Sallu means all of you pray as you see me praying. The Prophet is telling us to do it. That's called a command. That's the most popular version. Now some people, again, if they want to study fiqh properly, you do need to study these properly. You need to memorize them, different forms. If you don't, then your knowledge of when something is a command or not will become weak because you won't be able to decipher them. So the recommendation is to learn the different wordings which indicate command. So for that, if you want more on that, you go to the Kitab Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, Al-Usul Mi'ilm Usul. It's there. It's in English and Arabic. You can see all the wordings. If someone wants it, there's more. But the more you know, the better you're able to decipher if something is a command or not. It's very important, right? Because the first question you have to ask, is it a command or not? But without this, if we can't decipher it's a command, what are we going to do? We don't know what Allah wants from us. So we have to know which one it is. So the scholars, in order to help people reach that, they give you a list. Sometimes they mention 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different wordings, most common wordings, which if you find them, command. So that's one way to do it. A second way to do it is to learn the meaning of the word or the command. Look at the meaning. If Allah tells us to do something, and it's something which He loves, that would mean it's usually a command. So Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah mentioned this, Imam Sa'di said in his tafsir in the Muqaddimah, he lists Ibn Qayyim's benefit. When Allah mentions these, He loves something, or He calls it Iman, or Allah's pleased with somebody, or the one who does it, and He gives all these descriptions, that usually means Allah loves it, or it's a command, or either recommended or wajib. And the opposite, if Allah hates something, dispraises the one who does it, calls it lack of Iman. It means Allah prohibited something, either makruh or haram. That's a lot easier to follow, right? So, for example, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. So, is it a command? How do we know? Prayer is good or bad? Allah loves salah. Okay, so it was a command. That's easy, right? But it's not going to always work, so you can't rely on that. You have to also have both. You have to look at both the meaning and the wording. Why? Because it says pray, but some may say, okay, pray, but how do you know Allah loves it? So it's better to use the wordings. But the meanings are helpful because the Sharia has wisdom, right? طيب, when we figure out something is a command, either its wordings or its meanings, we move on to the next question, which we're going to see. But before going there, there's one more thing. Commands usually are in the form of one of these wordings, and these wordings carry the meanings, which is something Allah loves or is pleased with, or the person who does it. But there is one of the forms which we need to pay attention to, which is called al-khabar. قد يأتي بمعنى الأمر. معنى الأمر. This is the tricky one. It's called a khabar, a report that comes in the meaning of a command. One of the ways Allah tells us commandments, instead of using the command form, He just uses a report form. What does a report form mean? Allah tells us something, and He really means you have to do something. Right, someone may say, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that? Right, so before going there, what am I talking about? Let's give an example. An ayah in the Quran. وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. Allah says that the divorced women remain in their houses ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. Surah Baqarah ayah 2:28. Allah says here, and the mutallaqat, the women who are divorced, remain in their homes or by themselves in the iddah for 3 menstrual periods. Is that a command? No. Allah is just telling us that's how women are doing. So how do you know women have to do it? So the ulama said this is a description. Allah is giving us a report بمعنى الأمر, in a form of a command. This one is the tricky one, because you have to know when is it a report or is it a command. Again, that's why Usul of Fiqh, lots of interesting buhuth. Again, the whole book's on this, but you get the point. Maybe I'll give you one more example so you can follow me. But do everyone understand that example right now? Allah said that the women should do that, but He didn't tell us they should. He just said that women do that. So someone will say, how do you know they should do that? If you said it was a report, that has no rulings. But we're going to say, no, it's not a report. Just by report. It's a report with the meaning of command. Let's give the better example, which is to do with, an easier example maybe for us to understand. Women traveling without mahram. Right? People like this topic, right? Right? So these questions, they come up. So someone may say, okay, the ulama who bring the evidence that women can travel without mahram, they bring in a hadith from Bukhari, Hayy Adi ibn Hatim. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام فإن طالت بك حياة, or Adi, if you live a long life, لترين الضعينة ترتحل من الحيرة حتى تطوفي ببيت بالكعبة لا تخاف أحدا إلا الله. He said, Adi, if you live long, you will see a lady traveling from Hawda all the way to Al-Hira, which is from south of the peninsula, right, all the way to Mecca by herself to make tawaf around the Kaaba, not fearing anyone illallah. So they say this is clear evidence. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to Adi, that's going to happen. The women are going to travel for Umrah or Hajj from the literally south of maybe like close to Yemen area or down there all the way to Mecca. لا تخاف إلا أحد إلا الله. طيب, that's dalil. She can travel by herself. The jawab, who has the answer? He's going to bring the dalil Bukhari. You're going to say da'if? Right? So you say, so you can't play that card. Okay, da'if Bukhari. Okay. So we got to move to the next one. What are we going to differ over? What are we going to say here? Implicit, explicit. Well, somewhat. It's not 100% explicit, but khabar al-ma'na al-amr, or is it khabar by itself? Is this a command or is it khabar? It's khabar. They say it's khabar, we say khabar laysa ma'na amr. That's the way out. It's a report, not a command. How? Nabi said it's going to happen from the sign of the Day of Judgment. He also said buildings are going to be built. That's not a amr. Tall buildings, it's just a khabar. So is it haram to build tall buildings, guys? Nabi said, at the end of time, people are going to be tall buildings. Some people said, astaghfirullah, I have to make a short building. No. Yes, Umar was against that in his time period because he's afraid that we're going to get to that era. But it's not haram, right? Why? That's a khabar. It's not an amr. So that's the jawab. The jawab, this is khabar, laysa ma'na amr. Khalas. You see, that's a jawab usuli. Right? That's a good jawab. That's a person who's usul fiqh. And then you're going to walk with your head pride. Someone tells you that, no problem, I got it. But what's the problem today? If all we know is Bukhari Muslim, you're going to bring Bukhari, you're going to look at him and say, well, I also have an hadith Bukhari. لا تسافر المرأة إلا مع ذي رحم. So you brought Bukhari, what are you going to do here? This is why, if you look at the awam when they discuss, that's what they do. They're throwing each other a hadith, ولا فهم. No one has anything else. He has an ayah, you have an ayah. He has a hadith. Both of you stand still. Right? It's a no man's land here. Stalemate. And when you go home, brothers, at home, especially in our families, How can we teach them if this is how they are going to be? They don't know these other things. We have to explain these things in a way that they can understand. Not to say that this opinion doesn't exist. It's not a rational opinion, a strong, like it has a wedge argument. But the reason why the ulama, they didn't agree to it because of this discussion. Right? They say that, well, this opinion, this hadith, really, if you look carefully at it, they say that those who argue that it's supportive, they say that it's evidence, right, suggesting that's going to happen. But our answer we said was that it's simply just a report, right? And the Nabi said that he's not really a command. So hopefully you understand that point. So that's one of the ones that if you have time, we can study that later. But now we learn at least that whenever we get a text, we're going to ask if it's a report or, a command or prohibition. Likewise, prohibitions, they also have wordings and meanings. So let's take an example of that, and then we'll come back and we're going to finish some of the topics that are connected. If you get a prohibition, you're also going to take a look at its wordings. And you're also going to take a look at its meanings. What are some of the wordings for prohibition? The most popular, لا تفعل, don't do. That's a very common example of a prohibition. Don't do it. So for example, وَلَا تَقَتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. Do not kill a soul which Allah has made secret except for truth. So Allah says, وَلَا تَقَتُلُوا. Do not. So this la here is a prohibition. لا تفعل, don't do. That's the simplest, the most common version of it. But there are other ways to know something is prohibited. Example, Allah cursed the one who did it. Or Allah makes a punishment for the one who did it. Or there's a corporal punishment in the dunya for the one who did it. Or Allah called the person who does this having the qualities of a munafiq or kafir, etc., etc. So you can look at prohibitions by either the wordings or the meanings. Let's give an example. If someone finds a hadith ibn Mas'ud, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about the etiquette of the believers. Sibab Muslim fusuqun wa qitaluhu kufr. Right, to insult a Muslim's fusuq, wickedness, and to fight him is kufr. What is the first part of the hadith saying? Insulting a Muslim is fusuq. Allah called that action bad. Therefore it is haram. Allah prohibited it. He said something bad. Now what kind of prohibition is it? Then we can say either haram or makruh. We're going to say it's haram because Allah doesn't love fasad or fusuq. So that's it. وَقِتَالُهُ كُفْرٌ. What does that mean? See, this is the point. The Khawarij are going to come to see وَقِتَالُهُ كُفْرٌ. He's one of the biggest kafir because the Khawarij define everybody. So they're already in trouble. If they say it means kufr akbar, we tell them, well, what are you doing there? Right? But they're going to say because you're not Muslim. See, astaghfirullah. He doesn't take you out first, then fight you. So we're going to answer him. وَقِتَالُهُ كُفْرٌ. It's haram. معناه كفر أصغر. That's it. Because we're going to say no alif lam. See, because he's going to come and say, hey, wait, first of all, it's haram. No one says you can fight Muslim unless there's a reason. Fighting him is just haram. Allah called it kufr. That's one example. So that's how you know prohibitions. Again, there are more wordings or meanings. Now, principles. Some principles we're going to finish with. So each one of these principles will help govern this topic. First, we'll start with principles of commandments and the principles of prohibitions. And with this alone, you can do a lot of benefit. First, let's start with the commandments, principles related to commandments. Principle 1. Whenever Allah commands something, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands something, and He connected the command to a condition, anytime Allah commands something, and this command is connected to a condition, then if the condition repeats, the command repeats. So anytime Allah connected a command to a condition, if the condition comes again, the command comes again. Example, Allah connected some rulings like the adhan to the time salah comes in. So when time comes in, adhan comes. Time goes out, no adhan. Time comes in, adhan. Like this. Another example, when you hear the adhan, you're supposed to repeat. So the adhan was made because time came in. What do? I repeat. Adhan is stopped, I don't repeat. Adhan is made, dhuhr, I repeat. Like that. Because command is with the condition. Condition is present, command is present. Simple. We already do this, but now you can know why. Because some scholars argue, do you do command 1 time or 2 times or 10 times? So we're first going to ask the question. If it's connected to a condition, when the condition comes, you do. Second rule. Al-amru mutlaq. Right? بإتمام أمر بإتيان واجب. So here it's saying that the amr mutlaq, any command that tells you to complete something, any command which is unrestrictedly telling you to complete something, okay, let's just skip that principle. That's not that popular one or not necessary. We'll go to easier one. So we'll skip that for now. Al-amru bi-shay'in nahyu an diddih. That's a good one. That's a simple one. A command of something means a prohibition of its opposite. Easy. The command of something is a prohibition of its opposite. So this is one way you know something's prohibited, if there's a command on the opposite side. Example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He commanded, let's say, praying or being dutiful to parents. Hence, being disobedient is prohibited. Easy. Right? Because Allah didn't tell it, but we know it's just because Allah said you have to do ihsan to them. Right? So this will help us to know. If you look at the opposite, it's also true. But obviously sometimes the opposite may have different rules, but that's a general rule. And a command for something is a prohibition for its opposite. Third principle. Whoever fulfills a command has fulfilled his responsibility. By fulfilling a command, you have fulfilled your responsibility. Means your action counted until otherwise proven. So if you do the commandment, you get the reward. You don't have to do it again, except with proof. Because I did it. If I do the command, I did it, I get the reward and counted. Example, I prayed Isha. That's a command. I pray Isha and I don't have to pray Isha again. I'm done. But if I didn't pray Isha, then I have to do Isha. Simple. By doing the command, you got the fulfillment as long as you didn't do anything that broke it. Anyone can remind us what do you need for action to count? Yeah, we said the shurut al-siha, what are they? You have to be the pillars, conditions. So you gotta do the conditions, you gotta do the pillars and stay away from the nullifiers. And if there's obligation, it counts. So if I pray Isha like normal, it counted. No one can come tomorrow and say, oh brother, your Isha, I have to do it again. No, you have to bring proof I did something wrong. So that's a rule. If you did it, you're done. Another issue connected to this. Commandments for something also means a command for what it needs. A command for something also includes a command for what is needed to do it. Allah said to pray salah. How do we know we have to cover our awrah in salah? Can you pray salah with your awrah covered? Uncovered? No. So you have to cover it. That's one evidence. And then we look at the other specific ayah tells us to cover. Another example would be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to pray salah with ruku' and sujood. And so Allah told us to pray. Where Allah tells us to make ruku' in the Quran? So again, no one's going to ask you. They're just going to say hadith Rasulullah, right? But someone said, where do you get that from? وَرْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. Allah said, make ruku', those make ruku'. Allah calls salah ruku'. So there's no salah between ruku'. Allah called the ruku' salah, khalas. Rukn, right? But that's what we know. If someone can't say praise salah, praise salah. Salah means everything you need with it. So when we teach a new Muslim to pray, what are we teaching them? The real salah. Not just do something in the meantime. No. If you're going to pray, you pray. Because when you pray, you have to do whatever comes with it. Another rule connected to this, that the means to something that's commanded take the ruling of the commandment. Al-wasailu laha ahkam al-maqasid. Whatever leads to a commandment takes the ruling of the commandment. Simple example, if I need to take my car to the masjid to pray Jum'ah, and Jum'ah is a command, then taking the car is also a command and must be done. If Jum'ah is wajib, that becomes wajib, like that. If it's recommended to do something, then the means to the recommendation is recommended, like this. So these are the important ones. The most important one, the origin of commandments or obligations. This is the most important one right now. Al-amr, anytime you get a command, it means wujub, obligation, until proven otherwise. Hence, go back to the example I gave. Allah says, وَقِيمُ الصَّلَاةِ, establish salah, is wajib or mustahab. If someone looked carefully at the evidence, will say, well, It can carry both meanings. But the correct view is, the origin of all commandments is obligation. Next, okay, now let's talk about prohibitions. We'll finish with this. Prohibitions now. The origin of prohibitions is tahreem. Is something that is haram. Al-asl fi nahi, a prohibition. The origin of it is something is haram. Until otherwise proven. Means sometimes it doesn't mean haram. Let's give an example. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he talked about certain prohibitions regarding etiquette. So a simple example would be eating with the left hand. We're not supposed to eat with the left hand. Why? For many reasons. Imitating the shaitan. We know the kuffar, they also do that. But also it's a prohibition. The prohibition, is it haram or is it makruh? One group of scholars says makruh. The correct opinion is, we studied haram. Stronger view is haram. And the evidence for that, besides getting to details, the origin of commandments or prohibitions are haram. That's it. You walk with that. And again, some may differ with you, but say, no, that's awesome. So if we have a ruling that can go both ways, revert to the origin. Another example, Allah said to do something, or the Nabi Sallallahu told us to do something. Should I carry it to be recommended, or should I carry it to be wajib? The origin is wajib until otherwise proven. That's the rule of origin. So later, when you study more, you're going to find out that sometimes a prohibition doesn't mean haram, it means makruh. But right now, we're not there. So look what Allah says, وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُ. Whatever the Prophet prohibits you, stay away from it. That's the origin. But later, we're going to learn that there's ways where you can change it. And that's why there's difference of opinion on things. Fasting on the day of Friday, what, is it haram, makruh? Makruh. قال عند الجمهور. You see, most of us are going to say, أخي واجب أصل في التحريم. No, it's not going to work here. You see, the fuqaha, when you read them, they're going to say that. And that's why you have to understand fiqh, because those are the areas where you're going to find difference of opinion. Asl is one thing, but you can't stay in the asl all the time. You have to sawarif, the things that take it away. But imagine me and you, we open the Bukhari without any fahm. Go Fath al-Bari. He's got a long discussion. He's going to say makruh. You're like, well, makruh, what's going on here? And that's why you have to understand that when you see difference of opinion, instead of critiquing, you just ask the question, why? The beauty behind it is if you know why, then you can understand which side I'm going to fall on this discussion. So that's a research you can look at. Why is it makruh to fast on Jum'ah, not haram? And you can research that and you can see. Another principle regarding prohibitions, right? The prohibition of something is the commandment for its opposite. Okay, like the last one. Whatever is prohibited teaches us something is the opposite is that it's commanded. Right? Something is commanded. We'll go to another easy one. An-nahi, prohibitions, yaqtadi al-fasad. Prohibitions necessitate generally invalidity. Okay, we're going to say generally, but we're going to explain. When you have a prohibition, you have invalidity. Something is fasid. Who can remind me what fasid means? From the, what was it called? Ahkamul wad'iyah. What's fasid again? Nullified. So remember we said that from the ahkam wad'iyah there is sihha wal fasad. So if you did a command, the origin is it counted, sihha. And only gets invalidated if it's a proof. If I did something haram, the origin is invalid until proven or with the conditions. Example, I did a bid'ah. The bid'ah counts? What did Aisha say? Mardud. Any action into bid'ah is rejected. Right? So that shows it. If I did some bid'ah and say salah, I'm sorry, it doesn't count. Another example. Somebody did a transaction which is haram. This is a good question. Someone did a transaction which is haram. Is it valid or invalid? This is a hot topic amongst the ulama. They debated. So example, somebody used something after the second adhan of Jumu'ah. Is it valid or invalid? Interesting. Al-asr fi nahi fasad. When you hear the second adhan, what are you supposed to do? فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذْرُوا الْبَيْعَ. No business, go to the Jumu'ah. You did business. But some ulama said, that's it, invalid. You don't own that. Okay, you got to return it and get the money back and go to Jumu'ah late. Another mistake, right? two for one. Astaghfirullah. Right, you get 2 for 1 for that. Now some people, you see them, mashallah, just doing business after Jumu'ah. Okay, maybe they don't know. Or they take the second opinion, that it's makruh, or it's haram, but not invalid. It's still haram, you shouldn't be doing that, right? But So you see, this is an important discussion. This is one the ulama discuss. We'll talk about this later because it will come later. It's a conversation. Many of the fiqh business transactions go back to this. Example, somebody sold you something with riba. Do you own it or you don't own it? Is riba allowed in business? Allah prohibited riba, right? What's the ayah say? Halallah bi'a wa harram riba, right? Okay, I did haram, I bought something on riba. Do I own or don't own it? Right? So, the question we get often is that, brother, what should I do with it? Should we ask, do you even own it? Right? Imagine you told someone that, you'd be like, what the? It's gone already. Allah, that's why we have to study it. People are like, we are far away. They don't riba anywhere. Okay, but the ulama debated it and have rules about what to do and how to fix it. Simpler example. Is it halal to do business in the masjid? No, to buy and sell in the masjid. Okay, so I bought something in the masjid. Right, so it's makruh, haram, ulama it's not allowed. Haram, that's a better view. Because the hadith Amr bin Shu'ayb bin Nabihi and Jiddi, he says, Naha Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam bi'a fil masjid, right? Naha means tahreem, number one. And number two, fasad or not fasad. That's, see, you can't go from one to two. So the hadith is Hassan, Naha Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Nabi sallallahu prohibited al-bay' fil masjid. Okay, it's prohibited. طيب. And nahi, prohibitions mean, the first ruling is haram, makruh. Haram. Okay, good, we're all with you. Now I'll do it. I did it. Okay, so I missed the first step. Okay, now we're on the second now. Okay, astaghfirullah, you bought it in the masjid. Fasad or siha? There's a discussion. There's rules. Right? We're not going to get to it now, but there are rules. And the correct view, inshallah, it counts, but you did wrong. You see? That's fiqh. It's too easy to say, oh, I'm sorry, it's haram, it doesn't count. No, it counts, but you did haram. That's a proper answer. And this is the kind of answer people are looking for. When someone asks you, I bought something, did he ask you to return it? Is he really asking you to return it? He's asking you that. He's asking you, is the way out? Someone's becoming, what are you asking me? That's not an answer he's asking you. He's asking for that question. He already knows he did wrong. So the fiqh is to say, wait a minute, let me look at this masala properly. And that's what we need today, brothers and sisters. Today, people don't even know these levels. Not to mention that, if we didn't understand this issue, we might end up giving the wrong answer because we're being too simple. Every issue has its discussion. That's the beauty of fiqh. We know one rule, but doesn't necessitate the next one unless you analyze it. Last rule we're going to take a look at today have to do with the rules in relation to what is being prohibited. Prohibitions are of levels. So this is a very useful rule. Very useful rule regarding what is prohibited. If something is being prohibited using a particle of prohibition, harf al-nafi, like la, what am I prohibiting? The ulama say the prohibition is at 3 levels. The first is that it prohibits something. If you see it says prohibited, we're going to say the first rule, it prohibits its existence. The first thing, when something is prohibited, we're going to look at, is it prohibited its existence? Means if we say something's prohibited, we're saying that thing is not in existence. That's the first understanding of prohibition. That thing is not in existence. If that's not possible, the second meaning is the validity of that thing doesn't exist. Okay, let's give an example. La salata bihadrat al-ta'am. There is no prayer when food is present. Is this a prohibition? Yeah, la salata, no salah. Okay. What is being prohibited here? The salah. So if I prayed salah when the food is present, is my salah counting? Yes, but how did you get there? So that's a good question, right? So we got to be careful. How do we get there? That was the correct answer, but we have to say, how do we get there? Someone can say, I felt that one. You can't do that. It's not going to work, right? So la salata means there's no salah. Good. First meaning is prohibition of existence of prayer. So okay, is it possible whoever prays when food is present, that he didn't pray? No, he prayed. So we can't understand the text that way. Second meaning, no valid prayer when food is present. Can I interpret this way? Yes. But the problem with this is that if it has to be double checked. The second meaning is there's no valid prayer. You're negating the validity, not the existence of something. And the third meaning, you're negating the completion, not the validity. So levels, okay? Everyone's following right now? It's a little bit hard to understand in the beginning, but it's so powerful. First level of prohibition is existence. Second level of prohibition is validity. Third level of prohibition is completion. So Shaykh Uthaymin mentioned, all the ulama mentioned this benefit. Why? When you look at a text, you got to see what level of prohibition. Last salah, there is no salah. Physically, no, he prayed. So next meaning. Valid salah, well, we know that you can pray salah when this food is present because like Sahaba and Rasul generally they didn't always have food to eat. So third meaning, no complete salah. That's the correct meaning. Means it's better to eat a little bit than pray. But if I didn't, no sin. You with me, guys? You're losing reward, but you didn't, because you're getting distracted, right? In salah, right? That's the thing. Another example. La ilaha illallah. We already spoke about this before. We have to go back to Kalima Tawheed. Tawheed awal and akhir, right? Always Tawheed. La ilaha, there is no God or deity. What are you negating? Existence? No. Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah, another. No deity at all? Or true deity? True deity. Because if you say there's no such thing as any God but Allah, what is this Ganesh out there and the other things? Some of the people say there's no God whatsoever in Allah. So there's a false God. Okay, we gotta go back. There's no such thing as a true God. Okay, there we go. Illallah. Because if we negate no such thing as God at all, then what are people worshipping? Are they not aliha? What did Ibrahim a.s. tell his people? Nuh tell his people, what are these aliha you're worshipping? They exist. False gods, true God. That's the proper meaning. Another example would be Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited certain behaviors in salah. Does that mean my salah is invalid? Not always. So let's give an example. I prayed salah, and just one example we gave you prayed salah when there's food present. So you decreased your reward. You should have ate if you needed to. Another salah. Another example. There's no salah when you have to use the bathroom. Wala salah, wala. Right? Salah bi yudafi al-akhbathan. You have to go to washroom. طيب. If I pray salah, I have to go to washroom. Does it count? What does the first negation mean? Can I pray salah while holding it in? Yes. It's possible and it can happen. Okay, next level. Valid? Salah is valid when I do that? Yes. Third level? Completion. Especially if it's giving you distraction, your khushu'. But if it's getting to the level I can't focus at all, then it's haram. You can't do it. You need to pray salah, you have no idea what you're praying because you use washroom so badly? No, there's no salah there for you. Because what kind of salah is that? You don't have no khushu'. You just pray so fast to run to the toilet. So that one doesn't count. But regularly, when you have to use the toilet, line up, some people they say the sunnah is to pray. You can still pray. It's just makruh. Why? Because the meaning of the hadith. This is also another benefit we can take later. When you understand the Rasul's wording, you have to understand it properly. The ulama differ then. If something is makruh or haram, or what is being negated. This shows again the beauty of the difference of opinion, because you're not necessarily going to find out quickly what's the strongest opinion, but you're in the conversation. You're in the conversation. That's what today you want to be. If you study Usul Fiqh, you're in the conversation. At least you're on the table, right? You're following the conversation. You're not like, I don't know what's going on here. They're saying siha. Okay, let's talk about Aqeedah then. The Prophet ﷺ is the last example. The Prophet ﷺ talked about Iman, right? The believer, right? He doesn't commit zina, right? لا يزني زاني وهو مؤمن. لا يزني زاني, the zani doesn't commit zina وهو مؤمن. طيب, if you commit zina, are you Muslim, mu'min or kafir? Or Muslim? Where are you at? Khawarij, you're going to say kafir. Why? لا يزني. He's not going to commit zina, zani, وهو مؤمن. طيب, so why is he not Muslim? Because for them, mu'min and Muslim, there's only one level. You have iman, you don't. How do we answer them? What is the problem? Complete iman. Barakallahu feekum. You see, negating iman? No. Absolutely. Why? Because we have evidence that you could do major sins in Allah yaghfir dhunub jami'a. And we're going to say that the person is a mu'min naqisul iman. That's what the problem is saying. Not mu'min kamil doesn't commit zina while he's doing it. Illa sabi based tawbah. That's our answer. But if we don't have these gradations, not alone you don't know what iman is, the Kharij is going to come with you nas. He's going to bring you hadith Muslim and say, what are you going to do about this? Are you going to tell him, miskeen, you think we don't know? That's why Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah, we're the most knowledgeable people. Why? Because we know the deen, Quran wa Sunnah, ala nafsi murad. And the meaning that Allah intended. As Imam Shafi'i said famously, I understand, I believe in the Quran, and the meaning Allah intended by it, right? And the Sunnah and the meaning that Rasul's intended. Murad. Where do you think the debate Ahl Bid'ah and Sunnah today? Alright, brothers and sisters, are we debating a hadith authenticity only? We're debating here the khilafat and fahm. They're going to bring us all. So fiqh we discuss, aqeedah, but fiqh, the beauty of it, the difference of opinion can be valid, so it gives a little bit of ease, right? But if we didn't study it, we're going to have these problems. Yes, last week I mentioned one more example of homework, but maybe I don't know if anyone did it. the discussion about the Salatul Eid and Jum'ah. Anyone looked into that masala? I don't know, doing homework here, right? Or no one does anything, yes? So what's the masala? What's the issue? Okay, what's the masala again? So somebody prayed Eid, it's Yom al-Jum'ah. Does he have to pray Jum'ah that day or just Eid is enough? Gather. So they say, those who say you don't have to do Jum'ah because you did Eid and Jum'ah have the same illah. You're supposed to gather people. You gather everybody in the Eid, so you want to gather them again. So you don't have to. Yeah, so that's it. And then the other group of scholars says, no, you have to still pray Jum'ah. And if you don't pray Jum'ah, what do you do? That's the next question. What do you do next if you miss it? So Dhuhr or no Dhuhr. That's the next debate. So the first debate, the correct opinion, the Nabi Sallallahu told us you have a choice. If you pray the Eid, you don't have to do Jum'ah. You don't have to. Because he said that. Where the difference is, okay, we're not going to do the Jum'ah now because we did the Eid. And that's also one of the evidence that Eid is wajib. Because not wajib can't cover except another wajib, right? How can you miss Jum'ah because you did Eid? So I did Eid, okay, now Jum'ah comes. I believe most of us, the last couple of years ago, was the Jum'ah was the Eid. I don't think many of us were here. So clearly you have one view. So what do you do then? Some of us prayed Dhuhr and some of us did nothing until Asr. Right? So some of us, you don't remember, right? You have two choices. Group A says, after the Jum'ah, after the Eid, you're free to Asr. Second group, you have to do Dhuhr. Where are they differing? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said you have a choice about the Jum'ah, but he didn't tell us what to do after. So it goes back to the madhab of Sahabi wa Qawlu Sahabi. Who is the discussion around? Then there are actions of the Sahaba, Abdullah bin Zubayr. He came out for Eid, and then he came out for Jum'ah. But some narrations mentioned that they didn't come out for the Eid. The Jum'ah. So the ulama differ. Then what did they do after? Some say we don't know. He didn't come out of his house, or they prayed somewhere at home. He prayed Dhuhr, maybe he didn't. So some say the fact that he didn't come out means he didn't do anything. Khalas. And some say no, the Jum'ah was done and then he prayed Dhuhr because you can't miss Jum'ah except you did Dhuhr. That's the rule, right? So that's where discussion Qawl Sahabi comes in. Some of us, I don't know, you have to have one of the two views, right? Some of us thought one day, I don't know what I did, right? I didn't know if I did Dhuhr. Right? So you have to research this because if it happens again, you have to choose what to do. Some of us come to Jum'ah, right? Khuruj bi-khilaf. Awla, right? Just gotta come to Jum'ah. No, but the idea is if you take the opinion, you don't have to come to Asr, it's a qawl. Because some say it's also it's Eid. Eid, you already did one. But the reason why it's interesting, Qawl Sahabi, they're different. What did the Sahaba do? It's not clear. What did the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam tell us? We know, but we don't know what they did. Hence, they debated. So that's a good discussion. When you go home, look at it. It's a beautiful discussion. Also benefit to know. But all of these shows that when you understand the Deen a little bit more with Usul Fiqh, your appreciation for different opinion grows. Your understanding of the Deen grows. And your tolerance in some areas grows. And your intolerance for other things grows. So we're tolerant of real khilaf. Ikhtilaf sahih, we tolerate. Nonsense, we don't tolerate. And also your ability to defend against the falsehood strengthens. That's why the ulama spent a lot of time explaining this, because why do you think Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, the founder of the codifier of Usul Fiqh, he was the expert debater. You could not debate Shafi'i. Because Arabic is Quran, the Hadith, Usul Fiqh, what are you going to do with him? He debated Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, within moments he beat him. Because Ishaq didn't know Shafi'i. I said, go, Tafsir bi-Kathir, Surah Hajj, you can see the mas'ala and the debate. Imam Ahmed knows who Shafi'i is. Others, they didn't know his status. So you say, I debated him, a few moments he beat me. A few questions he asked me, I didn't have an answer. Ishaq is the teacher of Bukhari, guys. He said, Shafi'i, I didn't know Shafi'i. He finished me. A few questions, I didn't have nothing left. And the mas'ala was over. Because Shafi'i, you're going to bring Usul. Usul of Fiqh, no one can get, this is the power. When he debated Bishr Marisi, what did he get? Bishr Marisi was running for his life, brothers. His life was on the line after the debate of Shafi'i. Because after Shafi'i exposed him in his usul, all left was Amir al-Mu'minin said, just bring a shahid and we're going to do the execution of this guy. It's kafir. That's the only thing left. Just bring another person, this guy is a kafir. What did he say? Because what is he discussing, brothers? Imagine, he said, Bishr al-Marisi, that qimar, gambling, is the same as qura', drawing lots. It's the same. A'udhu billah. That means Yunus alayhi salam was gambling? What kind of kufr is this? This was his opinion. So imagine, he's on the run. This is what he's arguing. So Shafi'i told Amir al-Mu'minin, you have to catch this guy. This guy, look what he's saying. But Allah, guys, imagine when people like Shafi'i around, where are bid'ah? They're on the run. Today, we have to increase our knowledge in these matters so we can explain to our families. Forget about the people of Dalala. Our families are being confused by people on YouTube. We have to be at home saying, wait a minute, what did he say? And you just do a few benefits, khalas, it's batil, yani. That's how it should be. No one should be telling nonsense, should be told, except we can explain to them. But also we have to be careful because some people are not arrogant. They've been duped. So the benefit of this knowledge is not to debate, but to guide the people in the way that's bilati ahsan. And Allah give us tawfiq. Next week we'll talk about the next question, the set of questions, bidna ta'ala, with more examples. Anyone have any quick questions? It's kind of late now, inshallah. Yes. So the masjid, when it comes to business transaction, the masjid is what is considered the place of prayer. So the place where the people don't pray, like if there's like a center or office or a place where people do other activities, it will be exempted. Some, they say if it's not clear, you try to take the safer view, go to the doors of the masjid. But we know that when there's an exit and an entrance, today's time, masajid have office spaces, gyms or other multi-center purpose centers, those will be exempt because you can do business in there. So if you see business happening, usually it's not a masjid. Where the prayer is intended, that's the masjid. If you're not in doubt, try to go outside the building. Because some they debated on this issue. But Hadith Muslim Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when they went outside the doors of the masjid, they saw that merchants were selling the qamis or the qumus outside the masjid, doors of the masjid. So we know that it's the door. But today we have like multiple. So when in doubt, try to either get out the prayer hall, like right now over here where our office, that's not the masjid. Yeah. Yes. Correct, yes. So we said that when it comes to the prohibition about praying when food is present, this is a prohibition to do with the perfection of the prayer and the khushu' of it, because this is what it's taking away. So it's not only valid, salah won't be valid, it was valid. And if you pray like this, it's fine. But if you had to pray and you had some hunger, preferable, you did that. That's why they say it's makruh to do, because of your hunger. So we go to the third mean. But when last salat here, ba'd salat fajr, this is a prohibition. Prohibition usually mean not allowed. Hence, scholars say illa bisabab. Like you said, I have a reason. Example would be I missed the 2 rak'ahs of fajr, or I came late to the masjid. My salah is already done. I'm doing my fajr and everything. Or I'm going to do salah, that's a sabab. I have to do istikhara quickly. That's salah, because that period is a reason. No reason, not allowed. So that's how we said. But if someone did pray it, some of the scholars say for no reason, then that salah will not be allowed, and because the prohibited time, absolutely, yeah. Then that salah will be invalid. Then going back to that. But the better view is if you have a purpose, you can pray. And the proof we have specifically, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, one day saw a man praying 2 rak'ahs after Fajr. He said it's subh 4 rak'ahs. He said it's 2 rak'ahs of Fajr I missed. Then he kept quiet, showing that it's allowed. So that's how we'd understand that one. Yeah. Yes. So if someone needs to use washroom very badly and salah is going to go out, then you have to make your wudu and use the salah. Because the sunnah is to get ready for salah and with khushu', so you use the washroom, take your time and then pray because you have an udhr, you have an excuse. Because if you prayed like this, it wouldn't be on the salah. Because the khushu', the higher objective is missing, but also the scholars, they differed. If someone prays to a level where they can't understand what they prayed, and have no a basic khushu', the tuma'aneen, tranquility, you also be upset. Because you can't really hold the position in salah if you have to go to the bathroom badly, right? So you're going to have compromises. So better go use the washroom, ibda bil khala, finish, then go pray. That's the sunnah. So example, if you got to that point, then the washroom have to come, that's what happens, you delayed. Right? But you got to say, if you pray like this, if it's really bad, it wouldn't count. But if it's not that bad, you pray. Because it's disliked. But if it's really, really bad, you have to use it. And then the sinners on you for even getting yourself. That's one of the reasons why you don't delay salah that late. The washroom will be full. We never think about that, right? And then some people are like, oh, I have to use the washroom. Why you pray this late? It's already not good luck. Yes. People of irja. There's levels irja. So some of them are those who have like extreme, but they ahl bid'ah, but it's not invalidity. It's not invalidity, because Shaykh Al-Islam brings a lot of evidence. Sahaba set up free behind people who are mubtadi', person bid'ah, as long as bid'ah is not mukaffara, it takes you out, right? That's the correct view. So you can see the evidence. He has a nice risal on it. It's even in English, but there's so many proofs for it. So the idea is that the dislike for being behind such imams, if you have a choice. But in today's time, that's the only imam you can pray, right? So that's why. So I think we also Fajr did a Q&A on this one. This question explained the details. But that's the origin of Salaf, how they used to understand it. But someone's kafir, that's different, right? But the Murji are not, right? Yeah, Allah, yes. Muqtada yaqtadi means it necessitates. So we're going to see later there are some wordings in fiqh. We can learn it from the exact wording, and some of them we can learn it from the wording and it's included in the meaning of the wording. And thirdly is the dalalatul ilzam, right, which means the evidence of necessity. It's evidence we use, but it's not always as strong. And dalalatul iltizam. So what it means that something could not be mentioned by the wordings, but due to this wording, something else will also take the same wording. So generally speaking, something is necessitates, it could be disputed. Where something is mentioned, it's explicit. Or something is implied within the wording, it's also counted as explicit. But if something is in necessitates, you could dispute it. That's why sometimes, for example, they say that prohibitions yaqtadi necessitate fasad, but not always. Which means that sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Right? So that's why this wording we're going to see later when we get to the discussion of mantuq, explicit wordings. There's 3 levels of explicit wordings. That's one of them, yeah. And last question, inshallah. One more, yes. So say it again, the prohibition. So the origin is that when something is prohibited in Sharia, if it's something the Sharia is prohibited, then we're going to carry it in the Sharia meaning, and it's going to mean that it nullifies that things is Sharia existence until so kamal is not the origin. So an example would be if something says la salata liman lam yaqra fatih al-kitab. What does that mean? There's no salah for one who doesn't pray salah. So it's possible to pray physically salah without Fatiha, but the Sharia wise, the second different reason is it salah valid or invalid. So that's more correct, invalid. So nahi here means nahi wujud al-shar'iyyah. We're denying the wujud of something shar'iyyah, like in legislated existence, whereas the first one's nahi wujud haqiqiyyah, it's real existence. So some might say there's no salah for the person who prayed with a Fatiha, but you see one guy praying with a Fatiha. So that guy prayed with a Fatiha, but we're saying that no correct salah. Give you an example, the man who prayed poorly. He prayed poorly, what was the prohibition? What did he do wrong in the salah? Tranquility was missing, he prayed too fast. So what did the Prophet say? Irja' fasalli fa innaka lam tusalli, but he prayed. You see, lam tusalli salatan. What kind of salah? Sahihan. You didn't pray proper salah, go back. Not, you didn't pray whatsoever. You know, so sometimes someone says, I prayed salah. You might ask him, what did you pray? Because Hudayfa, one time when he saw a man praying so fast, he said, it's not a salah. So that's how it is called. So usually when we negate, you're negating something's real existence. But in the Sharia, it's not usually the case. You're not going to negate something's real existence. You're going to first negate its legislative meaning, its legislative ability, or then, if not, then it's perfection. The problem, if you come to perfection, then you're going to change the wordings of the Sharia a lot. So Fatiha is mustahab. No, it's rukn. And we're going to see, because the man prayed poorly, Nabi said, this is how you pray. They told him Fatiha. So that's the scholars combined. So this is very powerful too, because if you look at a lot of different opinion, you may notice that sometimes it's the difference in the interpretation of these ahadith. Yeah, okay, طيب. So we'll end with this much. Subhanallah, bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.